Everybody, good morning to you, and may it be a beautiful Sabbath in your home, in your heart, in your family. May it be a beautiful Sabbath that awakens you to your destiny, your calling, your purpose in life, your reason for being alive at such a time as we're living in. May you now begin to see things more clearly, see your future as well as your past in greater, more kingdom-minded perspective. May you be able to see others through the eyes of the Holy One and his angelic perspective. And may you be able to hear words and parse them, hear messages and parse them without letting your emotions overwhelm you, but instead to pierce through, to parse through and find what's true and what's real and what you can build upon. This is the week of Parsha Vayishlach. That's from Genesis chapter 32, verse 3, through chapter 36 and verse 43. The story of Jacob, as the rest of the world knows him, going home. He has been awakened. He has received a visitation in his place of captivity, and he has realized the deep, dark layers of slime that he has allowed his life to embrace, to be slimed with. And he's been 20 years in the house of a deceiver, in the house of a narrative framer, in a house of a manipulator, and in a world, in a culture where everything is different than it seems. Everything is layered. Everything is nuanced. Everything is rewritten according to each individual's preference and each individual's thought. And they call it their truth, when it's nothing of the sort. But that's the world in which Yaakov and most of us have lived in. It's the world that the Hebrews call galut. We often translate that as exile. And what this parsha is about the process of removing excess slime, exile slime from our lives. When we get awakened to the fact that we are not living as we were made and born to live, intended to live, we're living below the calling of the Holy One upon our lives. We're not functioning in the manner, we're not functioning at the level that our Creator designed us to, and our covenant calls us to. When we realize that, and that awakening comes, and this light shines from heaven, and a voice speaks into our hearts to go back to who you are. Get back to where you are. Get back to where you were, and this, as the song goes, where you were born and reborn again. That's where we're going, and that's what the call is. So this is Yaakov's season of going home. He's been awakened. He's begun the journey home, and as he goes at every station along the way, like us, as we begin our journey home, our infinite journey, our infinite odyssey, our infinite quest to get back to who we really are and why we're really here on earth, to get back to garden-style thought processes and emotions and lifestyle. Whether we get back to the physical garden is not even the issue. We become garden people even outside the garden as we get back to who we were born to be. We walk into the light, away from the darkness, with the shrouds of darkness, the levels of darkness we don't even understand, and didn't know we had embraced, didn't know that had permeated our mind, our will, our emotions, our souls, our heart, our being, our personalities. We didn't know the darkness was that heavy until we see the rays of light. And they call us and they beckon to us. And the rest of our life becomes a journey in pursuit of that light. The infinite journey. As we get closer and closer, it takes up more and more of our windshield space. If you know what I mean by that, if you ever go driving towards the mountains, and at first you see them as just a spot on the horizon, but the closer you get on your drive toward the mountains, they take up more and more of your windshield space because you get closer and closer. That's the way it is with our journey toward the light. Yaakov is our pattern. He's our model. He's the prototype. He's the one who's paving this trail for us of going home by going toward the light. Now, the stations along his journey are what takes up the bulk of the space in Parsha Vayishlach. you have stations of your journey as well. Those stations are strategically designed. They are orchestrated by the creator of the universe. He is waiting at each one to take away some of the slime, to take away some aspect of it. And sometimes it's going to take some pressure. Sometimes it's going to take some conflict. Sometimes it's going to take some fear, some anxiety to realize what you need to leave behind, what you can't take with you on your journey home to back to who you are, what you can't carry though you thought was essential to your life. You have to start reprioritizing at each of these stations and leaving certain things behind in the dust, especially things of your flesh, especially things of your appetites, your urges, your desires, especially things of your pseudo-intellect, your philosophical, theological, political, ideological opinions, and your talking points that just divide and just distract. And then you begin to say along the stations of the road, nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done, O Holy One. Well, that's the journey we're on, this great epic voyage, this grand transport, this grand transition from exile and its exile slime and the darkness that goes along with it, the dark energies that permeate us that go along with the exile, to walking in his glorious light and living as creatures and sons and children of the light. And not just the light of the sun, but the light of the divine Or. And the Holy One on the first day of creation looked at the tohu vavohu, the without form and purposeless and meaninglessness and void and dark. And he said, Yehi Or, let there be light. This divine light that is invisible to the human eye in this fallen state, but is what we begin to see when he awakens us in our neshama, when our nishmat chaim, the life force he breathed into Adam back in Genesis 2:7, begins to awaken and begins to look around and say, now I see the light that was hidden from the foundation of the world, and I am caught up in it, and I am embracing it, and I am going toward it, and whatever needs to pass away, whatever needs to go away, whatever needs to be put aside, yes, I will do that. Lead me step by step along the way. That's our journey. That's what the story of Parsha Vayishlach is about. And in physical terms, it looks like Yaakov is just going back home. Yaakov has been, as I said, in Padan Aram, in the house of Lavan, and the idolater, the trickster, the manipulator, the occult specialist of that region. He has been in that home, and he has been under deception and lies and manipulation and control for the past 20 years. Now he's free. Last week we ended Parsha Vayetze with the confrontation between Lavan and Yaakov, and the realization of Yaakov that he was finally free. He didn't have to fear Lavan anymore. He didn't have to hate Lavan anymore. He didn't have to feel like Lavan's victim anymore. He could be free. He could lay aside his ill will toward Lavan. He could lay aside his desire to see Lavan get what was coming to him and what he deserved. He could lay aside all that and just move on. So he saw the piling of the stones, the heaps of stones at Gilead, and the covenant that was made and sealed with a meal by Lavan and Yaakov. Not that they were suddenly going to be fast friends, but that Lavan would have no more control over Yaakov and his family. And Yaakov and his family would have a chance to break free. Well, that was what that was all about. That's how it basically came to an end. So now we come to Parsha Vayishlach, beginning with chapter 32, verse 3. And I would say, to introduce this Parsha, welcome to the disciplines of a journey of covenant return, of Teshuvah. And I call it the prodigal awakening and being remolded as a vessel of divine light, chapters of Yaakov's life, of Yaakov's story. I'll say it again, the prodigal awakening and being remolded as a vessel of divine light, chapters of Yaakov's story. Well, we have an overall theme, as we've been discussing in past weeks, for this whole Torah cycle of 5784. And that was a theme was given to us because of what happened on the day that we had Simchat Torah, which was October 7th, for those of you who don't know, which was Simchat Torah. And on that day, the attack took place upon Israel. The great Hamas dastardly attack that came in, surprise attack that came in and killed thousands, over 1,000. Hebrews took over 200 captives. And this stirred us. It was our rude awakening to what this year holds for us. That was not, as the leader of Hamas has said, that was just a rehearsal for what's coming. So this is not going to be over by virtue of the fact that there's been a few hostages released, which is where we are right now, and a short-term ceasefire. This is going to be a continuing problem, and what we saw will be just the beginning of the horrors and the atrocities that will be committed against the people of the Holy One. There is a rage forming in the nations. It's not a logical rage. It's not a rational rage. It's what nations do. The nations rage. Why do the nations rage? And why do the peoples imagine a vain thing? Because they see what's happening. They see the king establishing his kingdom upon the earth as a kingdom of love, and it interferes with what they want, their control, their demand. And so they lash out in hatred. And that's where we are. We have to learn how to respond appropriately. So we survive, and we give a chance to rebuild society once they've destroyed everything they can destroy. Well, the theme there became prodigals and reservists reporting for duty. That is our whole year's concept. We have been at ease. We have been arguing over trivialities and politics and ideology and theories and religious concepts and doctrines, and we've been positioning ourselves as if we were adversaries with the people of the Holy One, when the reality of the matter is we are prodigals and preservists reporting for duty. We are coming together. And the next question is, what will be our orders? Sir, what are our orders? What are your orders to us? We would ask, and that's the theme for this year. What does he want us to do? How does he want us to overcome, get over the slime that we have taken on? We don't do this of our nature. We don't argue politics and theology and ideology and religion by our nature, by who we really are. That's the darkness slime that we have picked up and taken into us and embraced. That is the slime of the nations. That's what they do. That's what their intellectuals, pseudo-intellectuals do. That's what their flesh-driven, sensualized, over-sensualized, over-sexualized people do. We are called to walk according to the will of the Holy One and do his duty. So, we would say, as Isaiah, as Yeshayahu, Hineni, here I am. Send me, Shalakenu. So we have come to a stage in our here am I, send me, surrender to the Holy One as prodigals and reservists, ready to report for duty. We've come to a season when most of the teaching the Holy One is doing to us, and most of the instructions are given to us in parable form, telling us stories. And the stories he's telling us are the stories from the lives of the Avot, which in Hebrew is the Hebrew word rather for the English phrase patriarchs. The stories of the patriarchs are our script. They are not just history, not just even our family history. What they are is our script. They are our grid. They are the road that was paved that we all walk in, whether we know it or not. I've been living in the northeast corner of Texas, and if I want to go to Dallas, Texas, which is about an hour, about 3 hours of automobile travel, to the west of me, I can't just go out there and start walking. I have to have a road. There was a road someone made for me. And that road is choreographed. It's written. It's a place I can walk. It's got, if it's in dirt, it would be ruts. As it is, it's concrete or asphalt. And I can see the trail of other vehicles that have gone. Well, this is the way it is with the life stories of the Avot, of the patriarchs. This is the season that the Holy One is teaching. Before he gives us specific instructions about rules of engagement, actions to take, that will fix the world, before he gives us mitzvot, before he gives commandments as it's read in English, before he gives us mishpatim, or judgments as it reads in English, before he gives us hukot, or ordinances as it reads in English, before he gives us any of the specific instructions, he wants to teach us who we are through the stories of our patriarchs. And so that's where he is. Before we're given any task to do, we must learn and embrace our identity, our true self, who we really are, why we're here, our calling, and our mission. Our true identity, our true self, who we really are, our calling, and our mission. So the question is, as we begin this journey with Yaakov, as we follow in his footsteps, year after year, generation after generation, we follow in the same footsteps. We walk toward this same script that he gets. Once the awakening, the dealing with the casting off the manipulation and the deception, casting off the dark energy, casting off the slime, and beginning gradually walking through the stations the Holy One's ordained for us to become cleansed and walk into the light, where the light becomes full windshield for us. Everything, not just a glimmer on the horizon that we want to pursue. So the questions we have to ask, and the questions that Holy One and the angels are asking us are, who are you really? Do you even know who you are? And perhaps just as important, do you know who you are not? You are not like the nations. You're never going to be like them. You're never going to fit in. You're never going to have their priorities. You're never going to be like them. You're never going to think like them. If you are who you are, you will not think like them. You will not feel emotions. Let your emotions get out of control and get outraged and get fearful and terrorized the way they do. You will not be driven by your instincts or your hormones or your appetites or your urges or your lust, either for flesh or for vengeance. You will not be driven like that. Do you know who you are? And do you know who you're not? Do you know whose you are? You do not belong to the Lavans of this world, the deceivers, the manipulators. You do not belong to the ideologues. You do not belong to the politicians. You do not belong to the government officials. You do not belong to the religious leaders. You do not belong to any of those folks. You do not belong to anyone besides the creator of the universe. You are his. Do you know whose you are? Do you know who it is that you are responsible to, that you are accountable to? Do you know how wonderful he is? Do you know how grand his vision? Do you know how wise he is? Do you know how good he is? Do you know how much better his way is than the ways of the world? Do you know how much more delight and pleasure there is in being in his company and doing things his way in comparison to doing things the way of your flesh or the way of your pseudo-intellect or the way of the world? Well, do you know who you are and who you're not? Do you know whose you are and do you know whose you're not? And do you know why you are here? What your purpose is? What your calling and mission are? And do you know why you are not here? You're not here to argue theology. You're not here to browbeat other people or control them or manipulate them or lie to them. You're here to be the children of light. You're here to be vessels of light and love and hope. You are here to be the example. So we're in the process of implementing, like all of our patriarchs, through these stories, we're learning how to implement the Hebrew initiative, the calling to cross over. Hebrew, avar in Hebrew, to cross over, to make a forward, to make a transition from one side to the other side. Which side are you on? And we're going to see that physically work its way out in the Parsha of Vayishlach as Yaakov will actually finally cross back over the Jordan River Valley, the Jordan River itself, and back into the land of promise during this narrative that we do in Parsha Vayishlach. We read in Parsha Vayishlach. But it's more than just crossing the Jordan. Do you understand that there are two camps? There are two ways of looking at life. There's the world's and the nation's ways. There's the flesh and the pseudo-intellect's ways. And then there's the ways of the Holy One, the ways of the Spirit, the ways of the covenant, the ways of the vessels and the children of light. Well, the implementing of the Hebrew initiative involves becoming the covenant counterbalance to the things that are poisoning the world. The world will not be destroyed by a flood again. We've learned that from Parsha Noach several weeks ago. So instead of the flood, instead of some sort of a periodic complete cleansing, what is the Holy One doing? He's introducing the Hebrew initiative. He's introducing the covenant counterbalance. Our job is to strategically counterbalance and push back gently and effectively and strategically in careful measure and careful dose against the Ra, the self-obsessions, and the shakat, the corruption, the uncleanness, the impure thoughts, the deception, and the Hamas, which is the violence and the cruelty and the lust for blood and the lust for vengeance that the world and lust of outrage is where this outrage comes from. We are to be the counterbalance to that. We are gently to give another way, show the more excellent way. That is our mission. That's who you are. That's why you're here. That's whose you are. We're not here to argue over the things the world argues about or be offended by the things the world's offended about. Well, the great calling to be a counterbalance starts with Yehi Or, let there be light, from Genesis 1:3. Everything else flows out of that. There's a few other verses that are quoted, general verses about the plan, the calling, the identity. We are to be Betsalmenu Kid Mutenu. We are to be in his image or in his shadow, walking as his shadow upon the earth, and projecting his to the world what he looks like, the likeness of him. We are to be that. We're to carry that likeness to the world. We are to be puru urvu. We are to be fruitful and to multiply, it says in some English translations, but it means to expand in presence, influence, and impact in the world. We're to be continually growing in our windshield coverage for other people, and we are to tend and keep. We are to serve and cherish and guard. Abad shamar, like the instructions were to Adam in the garden. We are to give an accounting for, treasure and cherish the blood of life, the blood of human life, the blood of animal life. We're not to be takers of life or shedders of blood unnecessarily. We are to give an accounting to that. We are the ones who will bear that because we have the responsibility to model and teach a way that does not involve just taking blood for blood. We are to go out from the things of the world, the things that we think are as our identity because of our bloodline, or the things we think of identity because of our culture, or our ethnicity, or any of those things, our religious background, or our region in which we live, or our skin color. We are not that. We are to go out from those things unto the spiritual truth of who we really are, which is the light of the world and the salt of the earth. Well, I could go on. There are so many other general aspects of who we are and what this calling to become who we are is. But I'm going to move on because this week we have a new one. In Parsha Vayishlach, the next level of the definition of who we are is given. And it's given in story form through the tales, through the trials, through the ordeals, through the stations of Yaakov as he makes his journey home. And basically, this part of our identity, part of our nature, part of our calling and mission is to become a Baal Teshuvah. That's a Hebrew phrase. It's sometimes called, a convert. That's a strange thing. Baal Teshuvah means a master of return. We're not just to return. We're to be masters of return. We are to provide a school, a model of return. We are to pave a pioneer's road for those who come behind us of how to return. We are to be humble, light emanating masters of return. That's a slow process. This is a redemptive process, a cleansing process, a fix the world kind of process, but it requires a lot of surrender and sacrifice. But it's worth it. Yes, who said it was going to be easy? Nobody said it would be easy. But becoming who we really are and shedding the things we're not, becoming, again, affiliated and connected to whose we are, we belong to, as opposed to connecting to the things of this world. Connecting to the mission to which we're called and why we're here versus the things the world wants us to be concerned about and think about and spend our time doing, that cannot be easy because it's too important to be easy. So we are becoming the Al Teshuvah, masters of return, humble, emanating and projecting light into the world. There is a little parable or a little maxim that I like to use, which basically is that it's an analogy to sailing, and basically it says that His word, the Holy One's word, is the wind, and our lives, are the sail. Without the wind, without a favorable wind, without letting the wind be what fills our sail, we are struggling, floundering, wandering. We are useless. We're not a vessel. But whenever we let our sail catch His wind, that is when we have a successful journey home, a successful teshuvah mission, coming back to who we really are. So the last wind, the last word from the Holy One that Yaakov got before he began his journey, the wind off of which we were now operating. He's caught the sail, he's thrown up his sail, and now the wind is in that sail, and these are the words. This is the wind. This is the prevailing wind that is driving Yaakov on, and will drive us all on. Here it is. In Hebrew, it came from Genesis 31:3. Here it is. Shuv et aretz avoteka. This is the words of the living God, the words of the Creator of the universe, spoken to Yaakov while he was still in Laban's house, but awaken him to his bigger mission. Shuv et aretz avoteka. Return to the land of your fathers, your patriarchs. El moladteka, and unto your birth identity, your place, your origin. Ve'eye imach, and I will be with you. These words should be, these from Genesis 31:3, should be in red if you want to go in that route. The words of the Holy One himself. This is the wind that is driving now everything that Yaakov does. He has his sail, and he is being driven in these geographical regions, going southward, back towards his homeland, back towards his true self, back towards his true north, back towards reality of who he was put on earth to be. And he's actually going to get a name change this week. He's going to be elevated. He sees himself, and the world may see him. His father and mother may have seen him as Yaakov, the heel grabber. But the Holy One sees him as something else altogether. Sees him as Israel, as the world tends to like to call it instead. Well, that is what we're doing. That's where we are. His words are the wind that drives us. Our lives are the sails that catch the wind. We don't perform His words. His words energize and empower and direct us in our behaviors and our activities, like the sailboat. That's who we are. We're taking this journey. Well, let's do a call to worship, and I'll spend a few more minutes with you, and then we'll go our way. If you know the Hebrew of the Baraku, you may surely sing it with me. If you don't, just enjoy. Let the Hebrew words waft over your spirit and awaken your Nishma Hayim, like happened to Yaakov in Laban's house at the latter days. Baruch Adonai Hamborah. Baruch Adonai Hamborah Leolam Vayed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bakar Banu Mikol Ha'amin V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah. And now may you open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are but strangers in the earth, so do not hide your commandments from us. Last week, Parsha Vayishlach left off with us at about the midpoint of the covenant adventures of Yaakov, the third generation strategic counterbalance asset. This week, he will mature into Israel. But it will be a process. It will not happen immediately. It will not happen quickly. It will not happen painlessly. It will be the thing that we remember the rest of his life. And we will hear this story and retell this story every year to remind ourselves that our calling is a great one, but the cost also must be counted. Context. Where did we leave off specifically? With his covenant of mutual non-aggression in place with Lavan and his progeny, the nations of the east, Yaakov has resumed his prodigal journeys back home. He's going back to his father's house. He is propelled by the wind of these words. Return to your father's house. Return to your essence, your being, your birth, your birth identity. Return back to who you really are. Well, that's what's driving him. And we finished off last week with Genesis 32, 1 through 2. So Yaakov went his way. And angels, the Melachim, the messenger of heaven, of Elohim, the whole God, the Holy One, met him. And when Yaakov saw them, he declared, "This is God's Machana. This is God's camp." And he named the name of that place. He called the name of the place he was Machanaim. And many people will tell you that Machanaim was sort of a translation of two camps, because he sort of gave that, but it's plural. It's a plural and superlative. This is the place of God's superlative encampment, of his presence, of his willingness to be with us. This week, Genesis 32 verses 3 through 5 will be where we'll start. And here's how it reads. Vayishlach Yaakov melachim lefanav el Esav Akiv. And Yaakov sent angels, or melachim, from his face, before his face, to his brother Esav. Atsa Seir Sedei Edom, in the land of Seir, in the field of Edom. Vaitzav otam le'amor, and he charged them to say this: Ko tamrum la'adonai l'asaf, for a season on my behalf you are to speak to my Lord, to Esau. Ko amar avdeka Yaakov, on behalf of your servant Yaakov. Im Laban garti ve'echar I was sojourning with Lavan, and I've been captured until now. Vayehi li shor v'chamor son ve'eved v'shivka, and I have oxen and donkeys and flocks and male and female servants. V'eshlachta lahagid la'adonai, and I have sent these representatives to tell my story. Limsochen ve'aneineka, in order that I may find grace, favor, goodwill in your eyes. And the messengers returned to Yaakov, saying, we went out to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you, to kara, to withstand, to oppose, to confront you. And he also has 400 men with him. Wow, that's not the news that Yaakov wanted to hear. So Yaakov was greatly afraid, and he was distressed. And he divided the people that were with him, the servants and the wives and the children, and the flocks and the herds and the camels, into Shnei Machanot, to two complete camps, to two companies. And he said to himself, he reasoned to himself, if Esau comes to the one camp or company, the one Kana, and attacks it, then the other Machana, the remnant of it, the sha'ar of it, may be able to escape by fleeing. The dark night of Yaakov's soul. This is a station along the way that he is going to face. He's going to shed some darkness. He's going to have to shed some fear, some terror. He's going to have to shed some emotions. He's going to have to shed some grief. He's going to have to shed some guilt. He's going to have to shed whatever it is that prevents him from being able to face Esau and not be afraid of him anymore, and not be dominated or controlled by him anymore, and not to try to control or dominate him or manipulate or control or deceive him either, to live as a brother to Esau. That's going to take some doing, but a vessel of light overcomes the internal challenges and the past and the history of brother difficulty. We see this recurring theme in the Torah and in the Brit Hadashah, in the new covenant, as it's called, a renewed covenant. We see it starting with Cain and Hevel, brothers who cannot get along. In Heber's case, he had really no say in the matter. He was killed by his brother Cain. When we see this recur in the life of Yaakov and Esau, these are twins. Will they be able to overcome the challenge that destroyed Cain and Hebel for that matter? Well, they will. They'll make progress. And then we're going to see this progress even further in the next generation. We're looking ahead a couple of weeks to the issue of Joseph and his brothers, Yaakov's sons. They will have a crisis of great anger and offense and horrible abuse and sin. But there will be not just an ability to coexist after that. There will be a great full reconciliation. Beloved, and so it will be in the latter days with the Master, with Yeshua and his brethren and us and the world. There will be the great reconciliation of which the pattern was laid first by Yaakov and Esau, and then in a greater sense by Joseph and his brothers. There will be a return. There will be a coming back, and there will be a reconciliation, a restoration, and a healing of this relationship. And we'll see that the words of the Holy One are true, that the wisdom of the Holy One is pure, that the ways of the Holy One are good, and that he knows how to fix the world. That's all I have time to discuss with you today. I hope you'll enjoy your readings of Parsha Vayishlach and all the different stations at which the Holy One removed slime and taught and trained and reformed into a vessel of light, Yaakov/Israel, on the long, arduous, but yet very fruitful journey back home. Well, if you have a message or a thought to me, a comment, question, if you just want to say hello, please do. Let me know where you are, what your name or your title is, and I will be happy to get back with you if at all possible. Thank you so much for listening, for letting me come into your home or your car or your computer screen or your cell phone. Blessings to you, and Shabbat Shalom.